episode 3 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I am Mark Bishop.
We are, of course, reading Reginald Garrigou-Lagrange's collection of essays in philosophizing in faith. And this time we are starting part 2, which is certain questions concerning knowledge, reading and discussing this essay, The Threefold Foundation of Thomist Realism. Maybe a couple thoughts on the editor and translator's introduction here. I thought it was a good essay. I enjoyed it. You haven't been as enthusiastic at the beginning of our episodes for the past couple. So what do you think?
Um, I enjoyed this more.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh,
yeah.
good.
Well, like the author's introduction and summary is easier to read than the
Mm,
actual content.
yes, yes.
So it's kind of like Cliff Notes, but it's like the same length almost. Like the introduction is,
Yeah,
talks about Aristotle and stuff like that. I only had to stop reading a couple times to look up stuff.
that's good. That's an improvement.
Well, and it's like it's just a different way of articulating ideas.
Hmm.
It's older. It's almost like an old English to me. Like
Mm,
it's meaning that it's like I'm not used to reading more technical, philosophical essays,
hmm.
and so it's like okay, I have to kind of it doesn't just flow
Yeah.
for me now. It would have been like 30 years ago. Would have been a lot easier for me to read, but I'm out of practice.
Mm,
Does
hmm.
that make sense? I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes
it
sense.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's like, for you, it's like, but for me, it's like, oh, all right,
Yeah.
I gotta concentrate, and then my mind drifts off, and
Mm,
then I'm usually reading it like in the evenings. I'm kind of tired anyway, and it's a little dry,
hmm.
and so then I'm like, oh, I gotta keep shaking my head, and then it's really compelling subject matter. But this
I
wasn't
think it is. Yeah.
this was fine. This was
Hmm.
good. I
Good.
didn't
Good.
mind this at all.
Yeah. It's definitely not like simple reading for me. Like it's still like I
Right.
need to pay a lot of attention, but I think you're right. I've been reading a lot of things like this in recent
Right.
years, especially over the past couple days. I'm going to try and submit an abstract. It's due September 1st to submit an abstract for a conference down in Ave Maria, Florida.
Yeah.
Down at the University of Ave Maria, where they have a seminar, not a seminar, conference on what's the title? Augustine and the Theology of Aquinas. So talking about Augustine's influences on Aquinas. So I'm hoping to submit something relating to, yeah, I don't know how much you care, but
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the punchline. What do
on
you?
Augustine's like sign theory, so like his view of like what a sign is and how he connects that to language, and then he connects that to like the Trinity and knowledge of God, and sort of examining what Aquinas does with that.
Hmm. Oh, what's that? What's that band? You should work in oh the sign song. Signs, signs, everywhere the signs.
Oh,
They
I don't
also
know
do
who does that.
Brownsville Station.
Oh, is it
Bro-
Brownsville Station?
I think so,
Yeah.
because they also do Smoke in the Boys' Room.
Yes, I think
Smoking
so.
in the Boys.
And they
Yeah.
do the Martian Boogie. Yeah,
Oh, Martian Boogie, the
Martian
best song
Boogie,
ever
great song.
made.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. It's a good song. I don't think it's the best ever made.
What are you smoking there? Crayons?
Beyond.
I mean, that makes it. Or what are you eating there? Is it eating there or
Eaton,
smoking there?
Eaton. Yeah,
What are
because
you
he's
eating there? Crayons? He's
yeah.
at the diner. Well,
Hmm.
no. Oh, no, because he says, those are Martian cigarettes. So maybe he's smoking.
No, I think he asks him what he's eating.
Eating,
He said,
yeah.
"What are you eating there, boy? Crayons?
Crayons?
These
I
are
know, those
Martian
are Martian
cigarettes."
cigarettes.
Yeah.
Try
Great
one.
song. Great song.
And off to the races. A little bit too pro drug, but very funny.
It is very
That's
funny.
that's a recommendation. So if anybody's listening to this on Spotify, pause and get the Martian Boogie
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
listen to that. Come back.
Yes.
You'll be in a much better mood.
Yes, that is true. Well, we should get into the introduction here of this
Speaking of
section at
better
least.
moods, if
Yes.
I'm ever in a bad mood, do you know
Hmm.
what I listen to? You know what I listen to. I've got on
Uh,
YouTube every time if I'm in a really, really bad or sad mood. I just put on Norm
oh
Macdonald's
yes, of
uh,
course.
dealing with the heckler teacher,
Hmm.
elementary
Hmm.
school, and I can say that because I am also a teacher. So
I'm a
it's
teaching assistant now, so I've like
yeah, you're with me.
partially, yeah,
Yeah,
partially
you're
there.
with me. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right,
Well,
let's get to the content.
yes, I don't have too much to say about the introduction because a lot of it is just summarizing the essays
Yes.
that are to come. One important point, though, from the very beginning, it's on page 37, the first page of this introduction, is talking about what epistemology is. So, epistemology, generally, right, study of knowledge, how we know things. The editor, Matthew Meinard, makes a good point that that's not really like a separate subfield for like Thomistic philosophy as it is in other more modern, quote unquote, schools of philosophy, because knowledge is just like intrinsically tied to or not the theology, the philosophy of what the mind is and what reality is. So it's more of a section of metaphysics than it
Yeah.
is like sort of something cordoned off specifically just about knowledge over there.
Yes. That is correct.
Thank you.
Um, and a good point by the author.
Hmm.
And it's a more interesting point than maybe you're letting on because
Mm.
it's almost foundational on how you perceive reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and so yeah, I like that, and I liked I'm becoming a Thomist the more because I don't really know Thomas Aquinas, his writings. I've never
Hmm.
studied him. I'm a little familiar with it, but mostly from people referencing it. So the more it's kind of like when I was learning about Tolkien's
Hmm.
philosophy of life. It's like, oh gosh, this guy makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
I kind of get the feeling I'm going to kind of go down that same path with this.
Hmm.
But I will say one thing to criticize this. There are certain things when I hear someone say something or I read it in any article or anything, I'm automatically filled with rage and hate.
Uh-oh.
And the two things are my truth.
Mm.
Anybody says my truth,
Yes.
and anything other than a mocking, satirical way, I'm out. I checked out.
Hmm.
Boop. I don't, your truth. There is no your truth. It's like when an old judge used to practice in front of us. Says, I don't need your case law, Mr. Bishop. And I said, my case law. It's our case law. Anyway, and secondly, which this book did, anybody that uses the word pedagogy or
Mm.
pedagogical, I am automatically think that you are just what do they call it? Like not a frumpy. What is it called? It's the English term for being like an aristocrat, know nothing. Starts with P or PH. Anyway, I don't like you. A poff.
Mm.
I think that's what it is. Poff? Poff? It's a
I've
derogatory
heard,
term.
yeah, I've heard fop.
Pop!
Yes,
There you
you
go.
you reversed it. So I don't think I've
I'm
heard
so
that
angry
before.
with them. I am saying it backwards. Yes. That.
Hmm.
That is
Hmm.
anyway, I don't anyway, it's in this book. It's on page
Yeah, go with
39,
specific page
and I
number.
have it circled and I have the word ugh next to it with an exclamation mark.
Good.
I don't know why I'm offended by that. I guess no, I do know. Too many people use it, and it's like a big word to them, and they say, oh, pedagogic. It's like in education. It's
Hmm.
always used in education. It's like you don't even know what it means. I don't know what it means.
Hmm.
Shut up.
Yeah,
And it's always in a guise to do something evil, in
yeah.
my opinion.
Well,
Anyway,
I get that sometimes because I've taken like a couple, philosophy seminars and things like that. Ontological
ugh,
is like a big one that people throw around. It's like, well, what does that mean, in the ontological sense? And it's like, well, what do you mean by that?
right.
What exactly is your point here? Are you just asking a question just to ask a question and use a big word, or do you actually have like something that you're trying to say? Which I think
Yes.
happens way too often in a lot of a lot of places.
Back when I was studying philosophy, solipsism was
Hmm.
was a word that was used a lot. Is my
Hmm.
my microphone still working?
Yeah, yeah, you sound fine to me.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
I think I'm gonna turn myself down. That was a big one. Anyway, so I'm sorry to go down that
No,
side
it's all right.
rant, but it
Yes.
was in this book, and now I'm already um, taking 10 points off.
Good. Well, let's get
Yes.
into the actual chapter here, the essay here from Garrigou-Lagrange, which is the Threefold Foundation of Thomist Realism. So this is him trying to set out what is sort of the foundation for this Thomistic realistic philosophy and what exactly do we mean by that. He starts off by saying, the first sentence here on 47, It says the fundamental thesis of traditional realism, at least as it was conceived of by St. Thomas following Aristotle, is that our intellect can, by its natural powers, come to have metaphysical certitude concerning extramental being and its immutable laws. So we can have certain knowledge about essentially the world, about what it is that we are sort of bringing in, by our senses, and we can know what things are and what essentially the essences of things are, which is a very important point.
Yeah, I mean it's foundational.
Yeah.
So and this is and it's so wild that this would be a controversial take nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is. I mean, I think people don't will say, well, you don't really know anything.
Mm-hmm.
How do you nothing's certain. It's all relative to your perception.
Mm-hmm.
And I've fallen into this before, in my youth, or maybe not even so youthful, where it's like, okay, well, how can you even prove anything? Everybody
Right.
has a different perspective on it, and sometimes, like, two people will see the same thing, but they'll see it differently because they're seeing it from
Mm-hmm.
different angles or from their different perspective. And so, but that doesn't refute that there is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your one person's vision of it might be obscure, but that doesn't change the nature of the thing that the person is perceiving. It just changes the perception of the perceiver. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what they're talking about here is there are there's some reality, knowable reality that is real, and just because different people can perceive it in different ways, or maybe not fully understand it, doesn't mean that it has changed or
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't exist or it is mutable or can be changeable based upon how people perceive it. It is what it is, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that thing is or that concept is, and then it's just up to you to try to do your best to understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's really the point, but that's so important, because if you don't have some foundation where you can know things and there is the truth, then it's like, well, my truth is that you're wrong. Well, wait a second. I'm either right or I'm wrong. You can't just I frequently say, well, your opinion is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, that's my opinion. Okay, well, your
It's
opinion is
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. No, it's not. Well, it's my opinion. You can't say it's not beautiful. No, that's
Mm-hmm.
a piece of shit, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You have that's a pile of poop, and it's not beautiful. And that is the truth. And
Yes.
you can claim, and like a lot of people fake it, like in the modern art. Oh, look how beautiful that is! Isn't it inspiring? No, it's
Mm-hmm.
not. No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually somebody randomly splattered paint on
Yes.
a 2x4.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or they'll say, well, I know it's not like objectively beautiful, but like the
yes,
message behind it, is sublime or brings beauty
yes,
or calls you to think about art. And it's like, well, that doesn't make it beautiful. It's still
right,
not beautiful. But speaking of the truth, then he turns to give the
yes.
definition. Then he sort of puts forward the three foundations themselves. He says it maintains the traditional definition of truth, adequatio re et intellectus, the equivalence of the thing and the intellect. That the intellect sort of takes in the thing itself, right? We become sort of the thing that we are perceiving in perceiving it, right? We have to sort of take in the form of the thing. And he says that this all relates, right, conformity with extramental reality and its immutable laws of non-contradiction or identity. That's the first foundation, the principle of non-contradiction, that something cannot be both A and not A at the same time, right? That just has to be sort of a fact of the world. This is of efficient causality. That which becomes does not exist by itself and therefore requires a cause. That, when we are understanding the truth of things, they have to be caused by something else. And of finality, every agent acts for an end, whether or not it knows it. And so those are the three principles: the law of non-contradiction, efficient causality, and final causality. And he elaborates on what all that means in this essay here.
Yes, good summary.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, the one thing I do mulling about is
Mm-hmm.
this concept of, if you have the intellect, like humans have the intellect, to perceive something, then they're basically saying that you in some way become that thing, or that
Mm-hmm.
you have some understanding of it within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm wrestling with that one, because the way it's described in the book, I think overstates it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think part of the problem is that he presents it so quickly that it's
Mm,
hard to really understand what he's getting because there's Aristotle and St. Thomas spend a lot of time on this, and there's thousands of other authors basically that sort of take this up. Um, from what I know and can retell briefly, the point is like we take in sense data all the time, right? And the things we perceive with the senses like leave an impression on us somehow. Like when I am touching something, like that thing is leaving an impression on my fingertips or whatever it is. From the sort of senses, we can kind of abstract the form of a thing. Right? That we sort of bring in all this sense data and reflect on it, and there's all sorts of other things that are going on at the same time. But I can understand, right, when I look at a table, I can understand it as a table and not just this table. And so, like, in what sense am I understanding table as a thing, right? That's not a material thing that's like physically in front of me. This specific table is, but the table as a form does not exist physically. So, like, how is that perceived by me, right? I'm taking in the form in some capacity over time through repeated exposures to tables and knowing what a table is and what it is for. So it's like that aspect is immaterial and sort of taken in by the intellect. Does
good
that make sense?
explanation. Yeah, it
Thank
does.
you.
It
Yeah.
does. But like what he's saying,
Hmm.
um, oh gosh, where was it at? I'll have to find it. But it seems like they're stating that you become the thing.
Yes.
And I thought I was like, that's what I'm kind of wrestling with, and what they actually mean by that. But I
Hmm.
assume that we're going to get into that later.
Hmm.
And I knew I had it highlighted, but I can't find it right now. Anyway, we can come back to that, I
Hmm.
guess. I don't know what your next
Yeah, I mean
part
that's what he
was.
he goes into really quick because that's like section 2, which starts on page 50 here, this chapter.
Yes,
But really quick on 49, sort of what he talks about the importance of this, kind of a point you already raised, but talking about sort of modern subjectivism, that really truth is just you sort of agreeing within yourself.
yes,
That like what is true for you is like whether or not what you're perceiving corresponds to your thoughts. And it's like, well, then that just sort of shuts you off from the entire world. Then you're not really actually perceiving anything. There's nothing about the external world that you're actually considering. You're just comparing your own thought to your own thought. In what sense is that truth? And so I thought that was a very good point that he brings up. Um,
yes.
yeah.
All right. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of
Yeah, that's all
backtracking a
right.
little bit.
Yeah.
On 49, he's talking about Aristotle
Yes.
responding to the sophists,
Hmm.
and there's numbered paragraphs there, and he's saying that the number one is that the knower in a certain manner becomes something other than itself.
Hmm.
Ludi say
Aliud ase. Something other.
aliud say
Aliud, like alien
something
from
other
another
than
place.
me,
Yes. Other than
other than me.
oneself. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes, other than self.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm struggling with.
Yes. Well, that is
I guess you're kind of because you understand it, you can perceive something other than yourself or separate from yourself. Is that what he's saying?
kind of. Well, that's what he gets into on page 50. The
Yeah,
section title here is Cognoscens fit quadmodo aliud ase. The knower is in some way, some manner, something other than itself. So let's I guess just kind of get
yeah,
into to what he's talking about here. It says
yes,
according to Aristotle, the knower by its nature and its more or less perfect immateriality differs from the non-knower precisely because without ceasing to be what it is, it can in some manner become something other than itself through the representation, which is essentially relative to the object represented, without implying a vicious cycle. So he says a lot there, and he kind of expands that here. But like when I am thinking of a table, right, there is some representation in my mind, right?
yeah,
That thing sort of has to exist in my mind. It's like that is my intellect is interacting with that thing. Like that is present within me, that form of the table that I understand.
yeah.
So it's like that representation relative to the specific table that is like within me in some capacity.
I don't like the example of table.
Okay.
I would prefer dogs playing poker, like
Okay.
a painting of dogs playing poker. And by the way, I have a picture down in the basement of
Mm-hmm.
dogs playing pool.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have a dogs playing poker, and
No, you don't.
I'm
Oh.
very disappointed that no one has ever gotten me a print of the dogs playing poker. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very important that if you ever do, or any of the listeners decide to get me a present that is a framed picture of dogs playing poker, that you make sure you get the one where the two dogs are cheating
Okay.
because they're passing cards with their lower limbs underneath the
Mm-hmm.
table to each other. Anyway, So, because if you talk about table, it's too simple to me.
Sure.
So like if I think we all have a vision,
Hmm.
a different vision of a painting of dogs playing poker.
Okay.
And so that's a kind of a multifaceted concept that is actually doesn't exist, right?
Hmm.
That dogs don't play poker.
Hmm.
So I think it makes the point a little better. We kind of we can understand that concept
Hmm.
of a representation of, this funny little scene that doesn't exist,
Hmm.
can't exist.
Right.
But and so the idea is that if plants can't think, and he mentions this, he
Hmm.
like plants can't think outside of, can't even perceive reality. Animals can perceive, the reality around them. They'll see the sunrise and sunset and things move and they
Hmm.
hunt and that kind of stuff, especially the higher animals. But humans, as far as we know, are the only ones that have this ability to have a concept within their mind that they know, that we know is separate from what we're looking at.
Hmm.
A concept of something different. Now, maybe dogs would envision,
Hmm.
dream about themselves playing poker,
Yeah.
but I doubt it.
Yeah. But I think importantly, like and he kind of alludes to this, like, but it's not just like hallucination, right? It's
Yes.
not just like there's some figment, like we think we're seeing something, but really we're not. Because kind of with the dogs playing poker, like first we have to have an understanding of what a dog is, right? We have to come to knowledge of that somehow. We have to have a knowledge of what poker is, a knowledge of what cards are, and things like that. So like the concepts that we imagine are based off of things that we know
Yes.
somehow. And that knowing is tied to the things themselves, right? The equivalence of the thing and the intellect.
Yes.
Yes.
Agreed. A good explanation.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes. So then he moves on, unless you have anything else from pages 50 and 51, he moves on to page
No.
52, which is the first object known by our intellect. And this is where he refers to being. So we
Yes.
just have this understanding. There's this sort of idea that's thrown around that being is the first thing known by the human intellect.
So
Uh,
this is like cogito ergo sum.
Kind of. And your pronunciation there was great.
Thank you. Well, how do you really say it?
Cogito ergo sum.
Isn't that what I just said?
You softened the G's a little bit. I think both times, weirdly. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say Air Joe. I think you
Well,
kind of did that.
I'm from Missouri. That's how
That's,
we
that's that's
say.
that's Missouri
That's how
Latin.
we cogito ergo sum.
Yeah, there you go. Uh,
Why we also say voir dire. We're going to question them witnesses. I these jurors. I actually confessed to the jury. I have no idea what that means.
huh.
This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do voir dire, and I'm not sure what that means. I think it might be Latin or French or something. But it means I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah, that's good.
I put
Kind
on
of.
put on a little drawl.
Yes. Good. Just really play it up. Um, but on the cogito, kind of, but not quite. I think we actually talked about this maybe last time, where it's like when we're
Yes.
thinking something, our first thought isn't that we are thinking. We're thinking about the object of our thought. And that's more what he's talking about here. That
Well, isn't this really a refutation of the cogito ergo sum in a way? Because
yeah.
it's not I think and therefore I am. It's that we perceive a being,
Hmm.
and that doesn't mean that we exist. We already exist whether we think of it or not.
Yeah, I would say so. But the example, he has a quote from St. Thomas in the Summa Contra Gentiles. He says, "Just as sight naturally knows color and hearing sound, so to the intellect naturally knows beings and those things that per se belong to being as such, and our notions of the first principles are founded on such knowledge." So, like, our eyes are seeing the color of something, right? I can touch the thing that I'm perceiving. My intellect knows that that thing is. That is what is first known to the intellect. And then through the
Yes.
senses, we can abstract, like, sort of what are the essential qualities of this thing and go from there. And what he ends up talking about, right, he says the things that per se belong to being, those are the foundations we're going to talk about. First, namely, that this thing cannot be both X and also not X, right? That is just necessary for it to be a thing itself. So that just has to be the case when we're looking at these things.
Yes. And then that's how you that I mean that understanding that a thing can't be a thing and not the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds so basic. It's like, okay, well, so what? I already know that by common sense. That thing either is or is not. But it makes a big difference when you're trying to debate somebody that doesn't believe in objective truth. Because if everything's relative, and so like you have your truth and I have my truth, if you believe that a thing can either be yes or no,
Mm-hmm.
or true or not true on a particular issue, but it can't be both. It's a complete refutation of relativism.
Mm-hmm.
That basic concept is foundational, and
Yeah.
that's what uh, it seems like popular culture in our society has rejected that inherent understanding that there is truth.
Mm-hmm.
There is reality, and whether you perceive it or not is irrelevant
Mm-hmm.
to whether it exists and what it is.
Yeah.
And that is not what a lot of people, a lot of stupid people are thinking now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think it's my opinion that it's not, not the case, or it's my opinion that all these bad things are because of Trump or whatever,
Yeah.
or because of the Democrats or whatever you
Yeah.
want to say. Well, okay, wait a second. Let's figure out what actually is.
Yeah. And I think
Well,
he
it's
makes
my truth.
mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
He makes a very good point about this on 53, where he ties it into language, right? Or sort of the common attack for a lot of the people who want to deny this. Like, well, maybe everything's just names that we've talked about nominalism, I think, in the last couple episodes.
Right.
But he
Yes.
says man differs from animals, first of all, because the object of his intellect is not limited to the mere sensible phenomenon, but rather is intelligible being because he knows the meaning of this little word is and quickly
Hmm.
grasps that the verb to be is the root of all the others. And he gives the example Socrates acts means Socrates is acting. And then from there
Yes.
we can go, well, that means that also Socrates is, he
Yes.
exists. So it's like not everything is just language, right? We, acquire, this linguistic capacity, but everything that we are using language for has some relation to being,
Yes.
right? It has to exist in some way if we know that this thing is.
Good point.
Yes, thank you. And then that's when he talks about moving on to the principle of non-contradiction, right? Because in knowing a thing, we cannot affirm in any meaningful way that it is and is not at the same time, as you just mentioned.
Well, the next section is called the ontological value of the principle of non-contradiction. I just want to
Hmm.
make sure that I pointed out your
Hmm.
buzzword,
Well,
your
but that's a good,
buzzkill word.
but that's a good use of it, where it's like, yes, actually, the principle of non-contradiction does mean something for what things are and what
Yes,
exists at all. So I'm not bothered by that one at all. I think that's a very good use of the word.
good job.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
So I think we kind of already covered this, didn't we? I mean, the being is not
Hmm.
being, and I'm trying to think.
He
You
brings up
talks
another,
about
yeah.
the sophists and the
Hmm.
skeptics, the Greek skeptics.
Yeah.
How this is a refutation of their views.
Hmm.
And he talks about if you don't, oh yeah, yeah, um, if you don't believe in this idea of non-contradiction, I hadn't thought of this because I don't think about everything, but
Hmm.
that it necessarily gets you to nihilism. And
Yeah.
I was like, wait, how does that even? Why does he come to that conclusion? It's because you don't believe in anything.
Hmm.
You don't believe if you don't believe in some sort of truth or some sort of one specific reality exists, you end up being a nihilist. Like it's nothing matters.
Hmm.
There's not God. It doesn't matter if there's God or not God because it's just my perception. It doesn't matter if there's pain or suffering or happiness or anything. It's just you just become a nihilist. It's
Yeah.
like nothing exists,
Hmm.
or you don't care if anything exists.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Isn't that what the point what the
Hmm.
author is making in a
Yeah.
sense?
And he makes a really good point sort of into that. But on page 55, he says, if you deny this, then here's all of the things that you also can't accept. He starts off, he
Yes.
says, well, all language, because then we're not actually saying anything at all. There's no signifying value for words, substantive verb, adjective, adverb, because anything can be anything. Same thing for every essence and substance. There's nothing that is a human, because anybody can be a human and not a human at the same time. The diversity of things. So I thought this was really interesting because a lot of times
Yes.
people want to deny, principle non-contradiction just because there's so many things. How can we actually know that there's differences?
Mhm.
But then this removes all diversity because if there's nothing that makes a stone, then everything can be a stone and everything is just the same
Right.
thing. It
Right.
denies all truth because you can't attribute any predicate to anything because you have to deny that anything has to be one thing. All opinion and probability. You can't even have an opinion
Yes.
about something.
Right.
Every form of desire, aversion, action, because all of those imply being in some way. He says even the degrees of error. In this way, 2 plus 2 equals 1,000 and 2 plus 2 equals 5 would be wrong in the exact same way. That
That's a
there's no
great.
difference between those two.
I thought that was the strongest point
Mm-hmm.
because that I think practically speaking is what we're seeing now, where it's like, oh, you're wrong about this, so you're just as wrong. Like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a second, I didn't murder five people. I just used a bad word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, but you're both wrong. But if you don't have value, if you don't have truth, and in a value system deviating from some standard, there's, it's all just relative to each other, and so you don't have some hierarchy of understanding or value systems, or he calls it the degrees of error.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge point, I think, with morality.
Yeah. And he makes a good point. I think it's in a footnote a little bit later, but he's talking about like two opposing sort of ways that you can take this. Like either nothing is real, and he kind of points to Hume, it's sort of a radical
Mhm.
nominalism, or everything is real and everything's the same thing, which is more or less like Spinoza's position, sort of a radical pantheism that everything's just God. And he says, well, both of those end up in the same spot. Because both of them would then deny distinction and deny all of these things that we just listed, essentially, because you can't say that anything's different from anything else, or you're saying that nothing really is anything in and of itself, and so you get to the same conclusion if they both lead to sort of a radical nihilism of nothing is or everything just is the same thing, and that sort of ends up in the same place.
Yeah, I don't think that was a footnote because I remember reading that, and I don't read footnotes.
Good.
Well, if it's important enough, they'll put it in the text.
He has a good line a little bit later in 57 before we get to the next section where he says like
Yes.
this would be the very death of the intellect if you like really seriously hold this position denying the law of non-contradiction because then you're just saying that there's nothing. It's an ultimate nihilism like we've just been talking about.
Yeah, I thought I like that quote. He says, talks about this, the death of intellect, and he says, such a denial represents an unpardonable sin against the natural light of our mind, representing in the philosophical order a fault similar to that which the sin against the Holy Spirit is in the spiritual order. I mean,
Hmm.
that's some strong language there.
Yeah,
And
because he says that
I think
last
he's
line in
right.
that section,
Yes.
he says one thus fights against the very principle which alone can deliver us from error
Yes.
because you
Right.
are arguing against reason itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what is happening. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing. Yeah. It's
Yes.
it's, it's funny how this is so topical
Mm-hmm.
in its own way without having to mention, of course, you can't mention the present because it was written a long time ago. Anyway, so then section five.
Yes. Our intellect knows its own nature and its essential and vital relation to being. And he says this is where he gets into, I believe, the last foundation here, this third foundation, where
Yes.
he says, by reflecting on itself, our intellect knows not only the existence of its act, but also knows the nature of its act, as well as its own nature as a faculty that is essentially relative to being and conformed to it. So he's saying we can know ourselves. We can know the actions of the intellect. We can know what the intellect is by reflecting on it. Right, that's not something we can come to by sense impressions and sense data because the intellect is immaterial. But we know how it works, and we know sort of what our nature is and what the nature of the intellect is. And we're not just in this radical doubt about can we actually know anything because we've seen that we can know things, and because we can know things, we know that our intellect, comprehends intelligible things. It's like we are able to understand these things.
Yeah, and I like this summary. It's right on 58. It's just a
Hmm.
line. But when it's like, okay, sometimes when I read these, I get tied up in the terms,
Hmm.
and I need to break it down. But I thought this was really good. He said the essential and vital relation of our intellect to intellectual being manifests itself through three operations. So this is like the three things your mind does:
Hmm.
conception, judgment, and reasoning. And I think
Hmm.
that's really such a simple, but I think complete explanation of what our intellect does. You
Hmm.
conceive of things, you have judgment, between different items or different paths or whatever, and then you have reasoning where you're breaking things down, you're understanding things, and you're reasoning to a conclusion from either a large group of facts down to a simple conclusion, or from a number of things, or from a single thing onto many things.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's great because I mean the three foundations, right? The principle of non-contradiction, and then efficient causality, and then final causality. They all just come from being, as he describes,
Yes.
several times here. It's like just in the very fact of knowing that a thing exists, and it has to be a thing in and of itself. Or it has to be a substance. Can't be both X and not X. Then I have to understand, well, it didn't just make itself, right? I can reason
Mm.
backwards through efficient causality, and kind of going back to that the first article in this, or the first essay in this book, with the upwards and downwards sort of understanding. So I have to know that something had to cause it. I can work my way backwards to a first cause for everything. There has to be something that was always in act. And then I can also, just by observing these things and knowing that they exist and sort of observing what they naturally do, and I can know that they have a final end. I can know what they are for. I can know what things are for. And if I deny the principle of non-contradiction, if I deny being, then I lose all of that, and I can't just actually function at all in the world.
Mm. Yes.
Yes. Thanks. Well, I think then we can just move on to his little conclusion here, unless you have
Yes.
anything else to say there.
Well, I
Uh,
have one thing. What do you
yeah.
think? There's one uh, common philosophical question that bothers me. I wonder what's this author, like the original, the ZZ Top Lagrange,
Hmm.
and Thomas Aquinas would think about that standard question. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? And the further, if I ever get any distance away from, of course, it makes a sound. It doesn't matter if anybody heard it. It's an effect,
Hmm.
and we don't need to perceive it to have it happen. The further I get away from that, I think the further I get away from a truth,
Hmm.
at least in my opinion. What do you think they would think of that? Oh, he's thinking. He's looking at the
Yeah.
sky. He's looking at the ceiling. He's giving it a lot of thought. We can visit about that later. But
No, I think it's no, it's a good question. Because I think what they would say is like, well, what is sound? Because like in its technical, like, material cause, I guess you can say sound is vibrations through the air caused by
correct,
some movement. But is that
right.
all that sound is? Because I think you have to think, well, what is like the final cause of what we call sound? Well, it's for someone to hear it. That makes it a sound. If nobody hears it, then it's just vibration. Um, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm shaking my head no and giving
I,
you a smirk.
I mean, it might be something similar to that.
No, I mean I know that's what the one understanding of it is.
Mhm.
That's the whole discussion is, well, if there's not a perceptor to hear the sound, then is it really sound or is it just something else?
Yeah.
Of course, it's
I,
sound.
yeah. I'll have to go back
It's
and look.
sound.
Well, I know Aristotle talks about what sound is in his works, and I think St. Thomas Aquinas brings that up somewhere.
Well, there you go.
So I can look into it and I can see what their
I'll
answers actually would be.
I'll ask Grok.
Oh, good. I'm very glad.
I'll get the answer first, thanks to my friend Elon Musk
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and his team of geniuses.
Hmm. I will say,
Someday you may have the opportunity to work for them.
maybe. I don't know if I'd
They're
want
gonna
to.
they're gonna need linguists.
Yeah. Well,
Get
I'm no
ready,
longer a linguist.
you get a linguist philosopher.
There we go. I will say that I think there's one more important point here that it brings up in the conclusion on page
Yes.
60. It says, as we said at the beginning of this essay, this realism, or philosophy of being, refuses to give in to the demands of the philosophy of action, or what we might call a superior form of pragmatism, namely the demand that we must declare that the traditional definition of truth is chimerical and thus substitute another, one for it. And he says, like, the other philosophies claim that the definition of truth is conformity of the mind with life and the subjective requirements of human action. Of whatever truth is whatever you need it to be, essentially, of whatever it needs for you to function. He says, well, that's not true. We do not need that. We can reject that pragmatic idea. Like, truth has to relate to being. It can't just be this completely subjective thing, right? It has to be relative to the world around us, because that's the only way we come to any knowledge, is by recognizing that things exist and that we can understand them. and otherwise we just don't have any knowledge of anything, and we wouldn't really have an understanding of what we need for our life. There wouldn't be a pragmatism because we need to know what our life is for and what our ends are in order to have any sort of pragmatic philosophy. And he says it kind of just undoes itself if you do not have this approach, this realistic approach.
That's a great summary. Good job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, and
Well, mhm,
I did enjoy this chapter now that we're going back
mhm,
over it, much more than the first one. Not that there's anything wrong with the first one,
mhm,
but yeah, I had to take a couple breaks. I'm like, okay, wait a second. All right,
mhm.
what is he actually saying here?
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to read the book, it's good
Mhm.
so far, but it's not light reading.
Yeah. Well, lucky for you, the next chapter is on the nature of knowledge as union with the other as other. So it's exactly the thing that you said really wasn't discussed enough. And I kind of agree. I think he needed to elaborate a little bit more on that. So that is the entire next chapter.
Nice. It's a little foreshadowing.
Yes, for all of our very excited listeners to learn more about that.
Our listener is excited.
Yes. Well, do
That's
you have any
good.
other final thoughts for this episode?
Well, I think we did a good job on this
Yes,
one.
I think
Yeah,
so too. I think so too.
I got one and a couple filled in some crazy rants and a reference to a future gift that someone should get me for Christmas. Hint, hint.
I'll keep that in mind.
Not from you. There's
Well,
there's a there's a particular listener that hint, hint. And yes, I have a spot on the wall in the basement where it will go.
oh man.
Stop! Stop! I'm having a conversation in the future.
Mhm. That's good.
When the listener listens to this,
Hmm.
she will know. It's like an old book, a Russian proverb joke.
Hmm. That's right. That's right. But do you have any other final thoughts for this episode?
I do not.
All right. Well, this has been season 15, episode 3 of Unlimited Opinions. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at ULMTD Opinions. I have been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.